Hey guys, um, today's video is a little bit different. It's not an angry rant or anything like that. I just wanted to have a conversation with you and give my opinion on a bit of a dilemma, you could say, a controversy, if you will. And I'm sort of going to be playing devil's advocate here because a lot of people, the vast majority of people, are on one side of the argument, and I am actually, non-ironically, and just not being a contrarian or anything like that, I am just genuinely on the other side of the argument. So I wanted to give my opinion on that subject. This subject, of course, if you can read the title, is using keyboard and mouse on console. Now, I am an owner. I bought this about 8 or 9 months ago of a Xim Apex. In case you don't know what this is a keyboard and mouse adapter for console. What it does is you plug in your keyboard, your mouse, and your controller to it, and you can bind any buttons on your keyboard or on your mouse to inputs on a controller. And then when you press those buttons on the keyboard, it will send that to the Xim. It will then convert it into controller inputs, and it will send it to the PlayStation. This allows you to play any game on the PlayStation using a mouse and keyboard, even if it's not natively supported, because the game reads it as a controller. Now, the vast majority of people are very against this technology. Many people consider it cheating. And the reason why I'm talking about this is I can actually open up the article for you guys here. 1 second here. There we go. There's actually one of my favorite games to play, whether that's on PC or on console, is Apex Legends. And Apex Legends is sort of in an interesting spot here because on PC especially, hacking is rampant. And because of this, and it's a free-to-play game, many PC players are playing it on console instead because the game runs fairly well on console, 60 FPS, and just because you don't have to worry about hackers, right? So many of us are coming over to console to play it instead of PC. And what is our preferred method of playing? Well, of course, it's mouse and keyboard. So many of us have been using mouse and keyboard on console. Now, like I said, I've been doing this for about 8 or 9 months since the release of Black Ops 4. Let me quickly give you a little bit of insight into what caused me to purchase one. It's fairly simple. When I started getting into my early 20s, I am almost 23 now. When I was 20, getting close to 21, I realized that I really couldn't play console games for very long anymore because the years upon years of playing with cramped up hands on a small device like a controller had gotten to me, and I could only find myself playing games on a controller for 3 or 4 hours before I would start to feel cramping, and I would have to take a break. Sometimes I would only be able to play 3 or 4 hours a day because of that, and I know some people, that's a lot of time, but when you're a streamer, especially, a 3 or 4 hour stream isn't very long whatsoever. And so I realized that I never had that issue playing on PC. I never had that issue where my hands felt cramped up or in pain when I was on a mouse and keyboard. Plus, even though I've been a console gamer for most of my life, I didn't transition to, playing on PC fully until I was about 17 or 18. So the vast majority of my life, I was a console gamer. I was used to controls. I even dabbled in tournaments and professional play on consoles. So I'm definitely proficient in terms of using a controller, but I just found that I couldn't do it anymore. So that's really one of the biggest things that prompted me to get a Xim in this case. And that was my main contributing factor for me purchasing one. So I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on the situation as somebody that has, years upon years upon years of console play on a controller experience, and then somebody that transitions to using mouse and keyboard on console. If I do think that it's unfair, compare that to other things that can be bought that give you an advantage, that nobody seems to talk about, and kind of compare it all. So the number one reason that I wanted to talk about it is actually because of a bunch of these articles where Respawn Entertainment, the guys that create Titanfall and in this case Apex Legends, they responded because some big streamers have started using mouse and keyboard on console on Apex. And obviously, I know, as someone who has streamed and made videos of using mouse and keyboard on console, people get upset about it. Usually because they don't really understand it, in my opinion. But their statement here is this. They say, our stance on this, about mouse and keyboards on consoles, the short answer is we don't condone it. We're investigating ways to detect if players are doing it that we're testing internally. That's all we have to say on it for now, but we'll revisit this and talk about progress with detection and how we'll address players that are using it in the future. So my thoughts on this statement is I think all of it is just kind of overblown and silly. I think it's all by people who have never actually used one of these converters before, because let me tell you, I have hundreds of hours in Apex. I have probably about like 72 hours or so in Call of Duty and several other games. I also play offline games with controller and mouse. I played Days Gone, or not controller and mouse and keyboard. I played Days Gone with mouse and keyboard. I played Last of Us with mouse and keyboard. I play almost everything that I can with mouse and keyboard, just because, like I said, that's my preferred method of playing. And one thing that I can tell you right now is that it is not the same at all as playing on a PC with a mouse and keyboard. It's not, because I already explained the process to you guys, right? What it's doing is it is converting your inputs to controller inputs and then sending that information to the PlayStation. This isn't something that happens instantly. There's a process there, and with that process comes delay and latency. And anybody that has ever played a competitive game in a remotely competitive setting knows that that time matters, right? The difference between a 1 millisecond delay monitor and a 5 millisecond delay monitor matters. And in this case, it's the exact same thing. It is not the same, and it does not feel the same as using a mouse and keyboard. It feels close-ish, but not the same whatsoever. I actually did testing on this when I first received the product. I did a live stream where I played 10 games of Call of Duty with a controller, and then I played another 10 games with a mouse and keyboard. I used the same identical class and everything like that, and I was in the same lobby for the vast majority of it, so I was fighting the same people. And what I found was, and sure, the sample size isn't huge, but what I found was I did perform better, but barely. It was right around an average of like 8 to 12%. So it really was not that big of a deal. So right around 10% better, you could say. That's not a huge difference. It's really not. And one thing that you can see if you look through any of my content of me playing on console with mouse and keyboard, one, I'm not as good as when I just play mouse and keyboard in the same games. Like, if you see me play Apex just on PC, I'm a lot better than playing Apex on console with mouse and keyboard. On there, I'm a lot better because it's not the same, but if I use controller, I still do well. It's just what's more comfortable to me. And another big thing is saying that it's cheating, saying that it is unfair. So I kind of wanted to take a look at something that I find really interesting, because some people say that it's it's not intended or something like that. This is a product here. This is a product called the Hori PlayStation 4 TAC Pro. And what this is I mean, you can tell right there, this is an official Sony licensed product. So this is official, licensed by Sony. This was for a very long time on Sony's website, even just up until a couple months ago. And I mean, take a look at it. This is, for all intensive purposes, mouse and keyboard for your PlayStation. It's specifically for PlayStation. You can even see it has the PlayStation logo here. And this is a legitimate product, officially licensed. It is an official product. So PlayStation doesn't seem like they're against it. And if we talk about spending money for advantages in anything, right? Because in my opinion, I don't think spending money to have an advantage over somebody is inherently cheating. You know, you can look at PC gaming for an example. You can spend money to have a better PC than somebody. If you have a better PC than somebody, you're going to do better than them in games. I mean, that's just a fact. If you're playing against a guy that is barely running at 30 FPS, you're running a game at 144 FPS, you're just naturally going to have a huge advantage over them. So that's inherently spending more money for an advantage. Well, you might say that doesn't apply in consoles, but it does now. Frequently, I play with people that have the base PS4. I have the PS4 Pro. I get much higher frame rates than other people that I'm playing with. I can be playing Call of Duty and be playing Blackout mode. Somebody on a regular PlayStation 4, if you take a look at Digital Foundry's video and the analysis of the performance of the PS4 versus the PS4 Pro, somebody on a base PS4 could be getting as low as 15 to 20 FPS, whereas I can be in the high 50s. That's a huge advantage right there, and that is essentially me paying more money for an advantage. Is there any difference? The number one thing that's brought up a lot of times in this debate is a SCUF controller, a controller that has additional buttons on the back. While not inherently instantly seeming like a massive advantage, it does provide a big advantage to people who can't play claw or don't play claw, because those people are able to do things such as jump around corners while maintaining their thumbs on their analog sticks. Stuff like that is paying money for an advantage, or something as simple as a control freak, which extends your analog stick, makes it higher up, which allows you to, more carefully aim. Paying for an advantage. An Xbox Pro controller has many of those features built into it. Paying for an advantage. In life in general, you'll see that money can oftentimes get you an advantage over people, but is that considered cheating? I don't think so. Personally, I don't. I don't think that paying money to have an advantage over somebody else is cheating. I think what's cheating is going into the game's code and changing that, such as aimbot or wall hacks. I think that if you're truly cheating, let's say in a video game, you're going to win practically every single time. If you're actually hacking, if you have aimbot, wall hacks, I don't even know what else there is. If you even have any of those cheats, you're going to win practically every single time. But when I use mouse and keyboard on console, I lose all the time. I don't have a very high win ratio at all. It's nowhere near these crazy numbers that people think. Hell, my accuracy isn't even that high. Am I good? Sure. But would I be good on a controller? Yeah, I would. Maybe 10% less good English. But still, I'd be good. It's one of those things that's very interesting to me, why people think that paying money to use a mouse and keyboard on console is such a big deal. I mean, if it's really that big of an advantage, it's not very expensive. I mean, you can get this thing for $160. That's not that expensive. You can get the Xim Apex for $99, $100. It's a little bit more expensive than games these days. Wouldn't everybody be doing it if it was just such an advantage? You see, I think a lot of this stems from just misinformation. People have never used something, so they don't understand it, and they lash out about it. It's a lot easier to blame, your loss on the fact that somebody used a mouse and keyboard instead of a controller. It's a lot easier than realizing that you made a bad play. You messed up, you missed shots. You could tell yourself all day, oh, I would have hit those shots if I was on a mouse and keyboard, but realistically, would you have? It's impossible to tell. Most of the time that we lose in video games, it's our own faults. And while it is easier to blame our teammates or blame our controllers, at the end of the day, it's usually a lot simpler than that. That's really all I want to say on the subject. I just see a lot of hatred and stuff, especially after this article recently. And all of these articles about mouse and keyboard and console and stuff like that. I didn't have a script or anything. This is my second time recording the video. The first time I forgot to pull up the article. So, that's a thing. But let me know what you guys think. Is mouse and keyboard cheating on console? Is it really that big of a deal? Does it give you this massive advantage that people think? And if you do think it does, have you actually used mouse and keyboard on controller? Or mouse and keyboard on console? Have you used it? Or are you just assuming things? I can tell you firsthand that there are a lot of really annoying things with mouse and keyboard, and the game that I got the most hate for using mouse and keyboard was Call of Duty, especially the Blackout mode in Black Ops 4. I got a lot of hatred for that, but what people didn't realize is if I wanted to loot, I had to take my hand off my mouse to use the arrow keys to cycle through the inventory. Leaves me extremely vulnerable and has me fiddling around with my keyboard to try and pick stuff up, just to swing my hand back over to my mouse and stumble around there if somebody shoots at me. It's a lot easier to loot and navigate UIs and stuff like that just on a controller. But that's not my preferred method of playing the game. It's not comfortable for me anymore, and, when you have the money, why wouldn't you spend the money on comfort? Why wouldn't you want to be comfortable with your hobby? And we see this a lot with a lot of these streamers now that are switching over to console to play Apex Legends and other games because you don't have to worry about hackers. It's very rare to get aimbotted or wall hacked on a PlayStation, whereas it's rampant, and I see one in almost every game of Apex Legends on PC, which has unfortunately killed the game for me, but I still love the game. I just don't like the community, so that's why I go and I play on console. But anyway, that's about all I have to say. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I will see all of you in the next video or stream or any. Bye.